G20 host Brazil tightens security after latest terror attack. A fire in an Indian hospital claimed the lives of 10 infants. US national debt exceeded $36 trillion. Zelensky said that they want the war between Russia and Ukraine to end by 2025. Dear listeners and viewers, we have selected information that we want to reach you, so stay tuned by sharing and subscribing.
Brazil, the host of the Group of 20 summit, has stepped up security after the latest terrorist attack. The meeting of the Group of 20 member countries will begin next Monday, with a focus on the economy and poverty reduction. The summit of the Group of 20 member states, which brings together the world's largest economies every year, will begin on Monday. Lula da Silva, president of the host country, Brazil, said that this year's summit will focus on fighting hunger and poverty, economy, women's empowerment, economic reforms and regional tensions, improving the governance of international institutions such as the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Trade Organization, combating climate change and strengthening sustainable economic growth are additional agenda items recommended by this year's summit. The member countries of the group import goods worth $500 billion a year, and China and the United States take the first place among the member countries in importing and exporting the most products. In addition, 75% of the world's trade, 80% of the world's gross domestic product, and 60% of the world's population are located in these countries. Although the group includes high-income producing countries, it is criticized for lagging behind in establishing a stable international market and a fair trading system. Although he says he aims to fairly support countries left behind by climate change, war and poverty, developing countries criticize him for not fulfilling these promises, Reuters reported. African, Asian and Latin American countries have repeatedly asked the group to improve its procedures, especially in relation to credit, extension and relief. The summit, which will be held in Rio de Janeiro on Monday, has been threatened with security following the recent terrorist attack in Brazil. As a result, Brazil has deployed troops, armored vehicles and naval vessels to ensure the security of the leaders. The use of drones has been banned and flights have been cancelled for 2 days at Santos Dumont Airport, near where the conference will be held. In addition, 26,000 security personnel, including 2,900 soldiers, are expected to be deployed in the conference hall and nearby areas. Leaders and ministers of 84 countries, including US President Joe Biden, China's Xi Jinping and India's Narendra Modi, are expected to participate in the conference. I want the war between Russia and Ukraine to end by 2025, Zelensky. It is being said that Trump's re-election will lead to a major policy change in the Western world around the Ukraine war. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he hoped the war would end next year following the election of Donald Trump. In an interview with Ukrainian radio today, the president expressed his desire for a diplomatic solution to the conflict. However, Russian President Vladimir Putin is not interested in reaching a peace agreement, said Zelensky. Moscow's continuation of the conflict could make it difficult to talk about peace, he explained. He also said, "On our side, we are ready to end this war next year and make diplomatic channels the first option." It is recalled that President Zelensky has repeatedly stated in the past that he is not willing to talk to Moscow until Russian troops withdraw from all the areas they captured in the campaign that began in February 2022. It is said that the election of US President Donald Trump will lead to a major policy change in the Western world on the Ukraine war, Deutsche Welle reported. Diplomatic relations between Kyiv and Moscow have stalled at all levels. Russian President Vladimir Putin says he will accept talks with Ukraine only if Ukraine does not raise questions about Moscow's occupied Ukrainian territories. Zelensky, for his part, rejects this idea. It is recalled that President Putin said in his phone conversation with the German government yesterday that any agreement to end the war in Ukraine must take into account Russia's security demands and new territorial realities. Meanwhile, the Group of 7 has announced that it will continue its support to Ukraine. The member countries of the group confirmed that they will continue to stand together in support of Ukraine's struggle for sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity. They also warned Russia again to refrain from actions that threaten international peace and security. The war has negatively affected grain exports from Ukraine and Russia, causing food insecurity for millions of people around the world, the statement said. Ukrainians have shown unwavering perseverance and determination to protect their land, culture and people, he said. The group of 7 consists of the US, Canada, Japan, France, Germany, Italy and Britain, with Italy currently holding the group's alternate presidency. US national debt exceeded $36 trillion. It is said that the country's debt has increased by $2 trillion in less than a year. Citing a website that tracks the US debt, RT read that the US debt has increased by $2 trillion in less than a year. The report also mentions that the superpower country's debt increased by 6% from January to November 2024 and increased by $1 trillion in 4 months. It is recalled that the US Treasury announced that the country's national debt exceeded $35 trillion in July. The US Treasury has not yet confirmed the $36 trillion announced yesterday. The US national debt will reach 106% of its gross domestic product, GDP, by 2027, according to a report released by the Congressional Budget Office in August. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, said, under current policies, total government debt will exceed 140% of GDP by 2032. The institute is concerned that the increase in the US debt and the increase in the rate of GDP is not only for the country, but also for the world economy. Donald Trump, who was recently elected as the 47th President of the United States, is expected to take measures to repair the country's economic breakdowns and control the rapidly growing national debt. Analysts estimate that US debt increased by $8 trillion during Trump's first term. The country pays $1 trillion in interest on its debt each year. Without this interest, there would be a $3,000 tax cut for every American citizen. However, the US national debt has reached $36 trillion, and it is said that every citizen has more than $100,000 in debt. A fire in an Indian hospital claimed the lives of 10 infants. It was possible to save 44 children from the accident, and 16 of them are said to be in critical condition. A fire at a government hospital in northern India has killed 10 newborns. The fire that broke out at Maharani Lakshmi Bai Medical College Hospital on Friday night was said to be caused by an electrical fault. According to Indian media reports, the fire first broke out in the infant's room, which was caused by a malfunction in the electrical system used to increase the oxygen level in the nursery. Hospital staff in the city of Jhansi in the state of Uttar Pradesh broke into the room and managed to save 44 infants. But at least 16 are in critical condition, local officials said. Images from the scene showed grieving and crying parents outside the hospital. In addition, the identity of the bodies of 3 children has not yet been identified. The tragedy is heartbreaking, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi said in a social media post. The Prime Minister said, "Expressing my deepest condolences to the parents who lost their innocent children, I pray to God to give them the strength to bear this great grief." State Deputy Chief Minister Brijesh Pathak told reporters that a safety review was conducted at the hospital in February and a fire safety inspection was conducted last June. Government officials announced a compensation of 500,000 rupees, $5,900, to the families of the deceased. This is the second time in 6 months that newborn babies have died in a fire in India. In May, 6 children died in a fire at a private pediatric hospital in Delhi. 2 years later, the German government spoke with Putin on the phone. The discussion is said to show that the West's stance on Russia has softened following Trump's election. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke on the phone yesterday for the first time in 2 years. In the phone conversation, which is said to have broken the West's efforts to isolate Russia, the two leaders focused on the end of the war and the peace situation in Ukraine. During the talks, Scholz urged President Putin to withdraw his troops from Ukraine and start talks with Kyiv that would pave the way for a just and lasting peace. According to the information released by the Kremlin, the discussion request came from Berlin. President Putin has announced that any deal to end the war in Ukraine must take into account Russia's security demands and new territorial realities. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who has opposed the phone conversation, is understood to have said the phone call undermines plans to isolate and weaken the Russian president. Zelensky in his statement following the discussion, "The telephone conversation with Putin will not add any value to the efforts to achieve a just peace in Ukraine. On the other hand, Putin has opened the door for them to break the isolation of the West that they were looking for and talk with other leaders. In addition, the Europeans, who said that the conversation is more than a telephone conversation between the leaders of two countries, opposed the actions of the German government, Reuters quoted the sources. The phone call was made after Donald Trump was elected as the next US president. The president-elect, who criticized the military support given to Ukraine by the West, including the United States, believes that Russia will not win the war, no matter what type of military equipment is given to it. In his previous speech during his election campaign, he said, "Military support is a loss because Ukraine will win the war. Instead of this, it is better to discuss the situation with Moscow in time." Trump has shown in various ways that his policy on the Ukraine-Russia war differs from that of the Biden administration and its Western allies. Yesterday's phone conversation is said to show that the West's stance on Russia has softened following the election of Donald Trump. It is remembered that Germany sent the Leopard 2 tank to Ukraine and expelled Russian diplomats, strengthening its relations with Moscow. The mutual restraint of robots in China. It is said that one of the robots produced by different companies in China has blocked their band. In this world where the production and modernization of robots is growing, they are starting to attack each other just like humans, Lal heard from China recently. That's the thing. In China, 12 robots were working continuously in one company. But suddenly, in Shanghai, China, a small robot enters a class of working robots without knowing where it came from. "Are you working part-time as a robot?" She poses a question to the robots at work. One of the robots that was asked answered yes, and when she returned to where she came from, she said, "Come with me, follow me." This video, which seems normal at first, has attracted the attention of many people after the landlord released a statement saying that my robots were kidnapped by an unknown robot. In particular, the robots' verbal communication with each other surprised many, and they were surprised by the thoughts that we have no rest, we have no home, where can we go, and so on. The robot manufacturing company, Hangzhou Company, stated that the incident was true, and according to the information that came out later, it was done to determine whether the robots could harm each other, ODT Central reported. In particular, the small robot that is said to have carried out the hijacking was made to know the version of the other robots, the producers said.
Thank you for watching our information. Please subscribe and share to your friends.